Hi and welcome back to this tutorial on the full workflow in 360 degrees video. Now, in the previous videos, we have touched on many different points in terms of using the automatic stitches, using templates, and all of these techniques that you can use to create good 360 videos when sort of everything goes according to the plan. But obviously now we need to touch on the real heart of Autopano Video and Autopano Giga, and the real heart of working with 360 degrees video, which is control points. So in this tutorial, I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about the interface and the way you can work with control points, and I will show you a small example using both control points and masks to make these shots look much better than it looks right now. So let's get right to it. So first things first, let's have a quick look at the control points interface and the different modes and things that you have at hand to work with control points. So if we click on Edit, we're going to go into Autopano Giga. Click Edit again here, and we click on Control Points. Now we have the editor here. I'm not going to look at that right now, but I have here my frame, and I have a lot of different things to look at right now. So the first thing we see is this mesh here, which are the links, and you can see that here we have some green ones with values in there and some orange ones. In those boxes, you will have two different values. The first value on the top is going to be the RMS value, and underneath is going to be the number of control points you have for that link. So here, for example, I have 96 control points and an RMS value of 4.73. Right here, I have 29 control points and an RMS value of 6.57. So this is the first indication of the quality of the stitching. Here, a lower RMS value is going to be an indication of a better stitch. Higher means the stitch is not so great. The software is not really confident. And the first thing really to understand about working with control points is that those links are really important, because one link will have an influence on the rest of the video. So if I have a very strong link, for example, right here, I'm not going to be able to correct as well those links here or those links here. So let's say I want to make that section perfect. I'm going to have to take into account that the fact that I have all those links all around, and I need to balance those. I need to make a choice. What do I want to have to be perfect? What part of the image do I want to be perfect, and what part can I maybe sacrifice if I need to? In the best of the worlds, you will be able to have all the links really great, but sometimes you're going to have to make a choice, and you really have to take that into account. So sometimes if you see that you are trying to add control points but you don't get a better value, maybe it's because in some of those links that are around the images you are working with, you maybe have 800 control points with a very low RMS value, which means that the link is going to be really strong. The way to work with that would be to sort of destroy some of those control points, maybe go down to 50 control points in those very strong links, and this will loosen a little bit the knot in that mesh and give you more ability to move the images around in the part that really interests you. And this will really be the way to concentrate on one part of the image against another. Now, another thing that we see here is if we have advanced mode selected here, you're going to have a few different options, and these are worth noting. So here we first have the filter tab. Filter is pretty much straightforward. You select an RMS value here from 0 to 100. And you're going to click then on that button, and it's going to destroy all the links or all the control points that have an RMS value that's over that number that you set. So let's say here we say 5, for example, and this shows us that all those links would be destroyed if I were to click here. If I say 6, now you see that all those links here are going to be destroyed. I can also say maybe 5. Here, filter points. I'm going to filter the points, and you see that I've pretty much gotten rid of most of my links. So I'm just going to undo that real quick. Next tab is going to be the steps tab, and this really, the default settings will work just fine for 360 videos. Next up, I have the scopes button, and this is really something that has been the theme of many questions for us, and so this is worth taking a little bit of time. So in the scopes value, you have the different optimization scopes on one side, and on the other you have where this scope is going to be applied. With the context of a 360-degree rig where you have identical cameras, you're only going to be using image or panel. Group would be for a case where you have maybe different lenses, different focals, different situations basically, and you would group the cameras that have the exact same lens and the other cameras that have the exact same other lens together, and you would work with those groups. In the case of a GoPro rig, or really any 360 rig using the same cameras, you're only going to be using image or pano. Now for focal, obviously you would be normally using pano because the focal is going to be the same throughout the panorama. It's going to be the same focal throughout the 6 GoPros. But focal we usually optimize using the image settings. So we optimize the focal for each of the cameras, because it's also a good way to sort of compensate for the parallax issues that you might encounter. So focal, you usually are going to use optimize and image. Now, distortion is a completely different beast. Distortion, you have 3 different possibilities in terms of optimizing them. It's first, second, and third order. The distortion value is something that has been calculated for a specific camera type. So for example, here the distortion value is actually specifically set for the Hero 3 Plus or Hero 4. Actually, the distortion is what you have when you are using these presets as the stitch as. This is exactly what you are choosing. You are choosing what kind of distortion values are you going to apply. This is really crucial. And when you go here, then the distortion values are these ones, K1, K2, and K3. So in most of the cases, you actually don't want to optimize the distortion value, or this would be really the last step. But the distortion value is really something that you need to be very, very cautious with, because you can ruin your stitch pretty quickly. So really, the distortion, you're going to have most of the time keep current value. And if you start optimizing, let's say you have optimized everything, you have done everything, and you just want to check if the optimization could be a little bit better because there are still a few details here and there that don't work. Remember that you do have to have a lot of control points throughout the image to have a good distortion value. Well, sometimes, yes, you can then go into optimizing third order or second order and back to third order. Ideally, you want at the end to have those 3 values. So K1, K2, K3, first order, second order, third order. You want to have those 3 values to have a good distortion. So ideally, even if you go into optimizing for first order maybe, then you will go back to optimizing for third order. You will always end up having to optimize for third order. And when you are doing the optimization of the distortion, you want to optimize for the full panel because you want to have the same distortion for all your different cameras. But in most of the cases, the distortion we have, these have been calculated specifically and we know that these work. So you don't really want to play around with it. This is something that needs to be used with caution. You can experiment, and I would encourage you to at least play around with it and see what's happening, but do keep in mind that the values that you have should work most of the time. The third optimization scope we have is called offset, and this is something we are going to optimize pretty much every time, and we are going to optimize it for each image because The offset is actually the offset between the sensor and the lens, and it's something that can just move a little bit, and it's really something that's happening when the cameras are built in the factories. And so this is a value that is specific to each camera, really, because it's really depending on the construction of each single camera. So these two values, offset and focal, stay on image, and they will be optimized each time you do an optimization when you are working with control points. And the distortion value, you might want to optimize it sometimes at the really end of your workflow, and it should be optimized for the full panel. The last optimization scope is a legacy feature from photo stitching. It's called viewpoint, and it used to be to add a last image that you would take by moving your tripod and taking the nadir in picture from another viewpoint, not from the exact nodal point. So the viewpoint would have been done specifically for one image only. Now the last tab we have here is called points, and we have the geometry analysis here and the detection that is used both for the geometry analysis and for manually adding control points. These I would recommend always being on high and 100 for the number of control points. This is the number of control points is going to look for every time you do a detection or geometry analysis, and the high quality of detection is going to be a great way to have the software look really closely to find the best control points possible. The only drawback here is that it's going to take a little bit more time each time you do a detection, but it's really worth spending a few seconds more each time. And by default, the rest of the settings usually work well. So for filtering model, you will want to use spherical. And for the geometry analysis, you want to find control points everywhere and merge them with the old control points. And an RMS max of 35 is usually going to be enough. If you don't find a lot of control points, you can still go a little bit higher, but 35 usually works just fine. Now you see here we are talking about geometry analysis, and we have here the geometric analysis. Geometric analysis is basically going to look throughout the old panel and try to find control points for all the links. So here, let's just click once on geometric analysis and have the software look for those control points everywhere on our image and see what comes out of it. So now we already have some much better links. We have a lot more control points, and the RMS value is still 3.3, which is good. But we still have one problem here. If we use a preview, we see that here the handlebar has been cut off the image. And this is something we don't want. So for this, we can use some control points to sort of make it better. Also because you see that we have some parallax issues here on the guy, so I want this to be much more precise, and we are going to use some control points and some masks to actually make that better. So how exactly do you work with control points? Well, you can select a link here, or you can go into the control points editor and just select one of the links here. So the link we want to work with is actually this one. So just to see a little bit more clearly what I want to do, I'm going to delete all the control points for that link. There are two ways to do that. Either I can click here on the little minus sign, or I can do function and backspace or delete on a PC, and I'm going to be able to delete all the control points. Now here, I'm just going to add only control points on the guy because this is the part I really want to stitch well. This is where my viewer is going to be looking throughout my experience. So I'm just going to add a few control points on the man. And then optimize. There's something I really like to do also is to sort of clean the bad control points by going into the RMS value here in the control points tab. So if you select one link and go into control points here, you're going to be able to select each individual control points. And you can order those control points by RMS value. And so here, let's say I want a threshold that's going to be, I don't want anything over 3. So I'm going to select here those control points that are from 5 to 4. And I'm going to delete them and optimize. And now I get a really nice RMS value of 2.86, which is really low. And if I go back to my image here, I can see that the guy is stitched much better. I can still keep on working a little bit on that. Add a few more control points. Optimize. Clean up. Optimize. And again. And the more control points you add on one part of the image, the more the software learns that this part of the image is really important to you. So at some point, when you have conflicted control points, you might start by adding control points and seeing that they have all a bad RMS value. They all have a high RMS value. Sometimes it's really worth a try to keep on adding control points, keep on adding control points and optimizing, adding control points and optimizing. And at some point, basically the weight of those new control points that you are adding is going to overthrow the balance. And suddenly the software is going to understand that this part of the image where you have a lot of control points is actually more important to you than another part of the image that the software used to put forward. So suddenly all those bad control points are going to turn green and they are going to get better, and the part of the image, some part of the image is probably going to turn orange or red. It's going to get a higher value of RMS because suddenly the software has prioritized this area where you've added a lot of control points and has given low priority to this previous area. And so it's trying to stitch perfectly the area where you have a lot of control points. And for that, it has to make the area that used to be good a little bit less good. So it's, again, really a question of balance between what you want to look, what you want to show, what is going to be easy to correct in advanced post-production, maybe in After Effects or in Premiere. What exactly do you want to have perfect? And you really have to focus on those areas. So using that workflow, you really can correct a lot of things. And in the worst case scenario, you could actually just destroy all the links and keep only a good stitch on our friend here. And then composite all of these things. That's something we are going to talk a little bit about in a future lesson. But right now, I think if I'm looking just at the guy, the stitch is pretty good. And then I'm going to correct that with a few masks as well. Because you see that here I have a few options. So I'm just going to use mask here to sort of push. Now my monopod is starting to appear, so I don't want that. And I'm having troubles here as well. And now this looks much better. And that's it. There you go. Now if I save and go back here, my stitch here is a lot better. And since the camera was static, compared to the bike. We're gonna have a good stitch on the bike throughout, and the rest of the area is pretty easy to stitch. So really here we have a good shot that we can be happy with. So that's it. Hopefully this gives you a better idea and a better understanding of the way control points work in Autopano Video Pro and Autopano Giga, the way you can work with them, and the sort of workflow that you need to apply to get a good result. Obviously, this is something that requires a lot of time and a lot of practice to learn and to perfect, but you really have here the basis to keep on learning by yourself and keep on working on footage, because it's really always changing. It's always a new situation. Always you are going to find some things that work in one situation and don't in another. And you really have to understand the way control points work and the way this balance between the control points between one area and another work together to get to good results. So this is an ongoing process, and I hope you now feel like you have the tools to keep on learning by yourself and keep on practicing to get to that place where you are confident you can stitch pretty much whatever you want. Now, sometimes you are going to have to stitch for one specific area and then stitch for another specific area of your ecru rectangular, and then combine those two images using maybe After Effects. And this is going to be the theme of our next lesson. So I'll see you then.